Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the time is where you are in any part of the world. Welcome to the School of Wisdom, the first edition in the year 2022. So I suppose it's not out of order to say Happy New Year to everyone listening to me or watching me from any part of the world, even though we are in February. So welcome to the School of Wisdom. And for those that are new, the School of Wisdom essentially is a platform where we teach the practicalities of everyday life in line with the simplicity of the Word of God. In other words, what we do at the School of Wisdom essentially is to learn how to apply the simplicity of the Bible, the simplicity of the Word of God, and relate it to the practicalities of everyday life. So, welcome once again. My name is Peter Olaiwola, and we started last year. We had some amazing sessions. In case you missed any of the sessions, in case you just want to listen to them again or just acquaint yourself with some of the things that we discussed and apply them to your everyday life, these sessions are available on this very channel. So please make sure you go over them again. You can share them with your loved ones as well as your friends and acquaintances. Okay, so what are we talking about this month, February 2022? So we want to look at what I've captioned true success in life. True success in life. And basically the rationale behind that is this. When you look at like a new year as we have now, many of us have goals, many of us have dreams, many of us have targets, many of us have desires. We have things that we are pursuing, and some of us even have what we call New Year resolutions. That is the things that we are aiming to achieve. And as much as it's good to have goals, to have targets, at times it's also good to pause to ask ourselves some important questions. In other words, what goals are we actually pursuing? Like whose goals, whose visions, whose dreams are we actually pursuing? Why are we pursuing the dreams, the goals, the desires, the ambitions, if you like, that we have? And another thing to also think about is how do we then measure success? How do we measure achievement? Do we measure achievement or failure in relation to our goals alone or in relation to our target alone? So that means if we achieve those goals or those targets, we are successful. But then if we don't, we are not successful, right? But then if that is just what success is about, how about cases and scenarios where we have achieved our goals, we have achieved our targets, we have achieved our expectations, but we are still not fulfilled, we are still not satisfied? Why do people achieve certain goals, certain milestones in their lives or in their career, in their business or whatever, and they still feel dissatisfied about such milestones or achievement? In other words, another way you can still put it is, why do some people make money, for example, and still do not feel fulfilled? What is missing? In other words, in simple terms, whose definition of success are you living by? Whose definition of success are we living by? And like we said for wisdom and foolishness, that it's always good to have a common standard, a particular benchmark upon which we measure what we are actually defining or what we are trying to access or understand. So in this context, we can say people have different idea about what success in life is, but we can say we can only settle the argument, the contention, by looking at what God calls success, what is called success in the eyes of God. And so that will lead us to what I call God's definition of success. God's definition of success. In other words, how does God define success? How do we measure success from the perspective of God? And why is it important to look at it from God's angle? Because God is ever right. He is actually called the only wise God. So his standards, his ideals are actually the best benchmark upon which we can measure what we are doing. Now, to think about that, for those of us that are very familiar with the Bible, now think about people like Jesus Christ in the Bible. Would you say he was successful? Yes. Think about people like Joseph in the Bible. Would you say he was successful? Think about people like Daniel in the Bible. Would you say he was successful? Now think about people like Paul. Think about people like Peter. Would you say they were successful? Yes. Abraham, Isaac, all of them. Now the next question is, How do you know? On what basis would you say they were successful? On what basis would you say, because they had more money or not? If you say because they had money, people like Paul the apostle, would you say he was successful because he was rich? Maybe not. And then if you say they were successful because they had maybe excellent children and all that, and there were people like Jesus and Paul that were not married. And then if you just look at different parameters by which we measure success, and then you begin to maybe have doubt about certain things, certain parameters with which we measure what we call success. Also in contemporary times, in modern world, if you think about people like Billy Graham, if you think about people like Susanna Wesley, maybe some of us have not even heard of that before. If you think about people like Mother Teresa, Florence Nightingale, Ben Carson, and a host of others like that, would you say they were successful because of what they achieved or not? In other words, success from the perspective of God is beyond maybe popularity. So when I mentioned Susanna Wesley now, some people probably have never heard of that name before. So that should tell us that, in other words, a person does not necessarily need to be successful or to contribute anything positively, for example, to be popular. If success is about popularity, you don't need to actually be successful. You don't need to contribute positively to be successful. If success is actually about popularity, think about terrorists, think about notorious criminals, think about armed robbers. So there was actually the story of somebody that assassinated the president of a nation. And then when the person was apprehended, they found out he didn't have any criminal record. He was not connected to any terrorist organization and all that. And then they were just questioning, why would you do that? Why did you do this? And the only reasonable explanation, quote unquote, that the person gave was that they just wanted to be famous. They just wanted to be popular. So in other words, success is actually beyond popularity. It's not just about maybe people knowing some other people and not knowing some other people. So this idea, this drive that some people have about success being about popularity, for example, the need for cheap popularity is why so many people, for example, are quick to expose themselves on social media, put everything about their lives out there, because they actually think, there are certain benchmarks and parameters that they must measure themselves with. In other words, social media followership, for example, or popularity is not the same thing as success, right? Now, also from these individuals that we have mentioned, we can also see that success is not about possessions. So we think about people like Florence Nightingale, like Mother Teresa. Would you say they were successful? Yes, they were. On what basis would you say that? We're still coming back to that. Now, if you think success is also about possession, if you think about the richest man in the world, for example, if you say, oh, he's successful because of what he has, what do you say of people that do not have such? Or if success is about what we have, what we possess, on what basis do you actually measure what is enough to be considered successful? How much would you have in your bank account if the idea of success is just about making money? How much do you have to make in your account before you are considered successful, or before a person is considered successful by that particular definition, right? So this is why, for example, I always say to people that you need to be careful about the idea of overstretched giving, the message of overstretched giving messages, where people just say, oh, if you just give this, God will give you £100. If you give £200, you get £2,000. So some of the time these messages breed what we call greed. They turn God into a kind of Ponzi scheme, the pyramid scheme, that if you give this, you get more and all that. And then hopefully one of these sessions this year, we'll be able to talk about productivity and how this affects material or financial prosperity. So in other words, as important as giving is, for example, as important as it is to be prosperous, to have money, right? It does not actually mean that success is about material possession, right? Success is not about material possession. Also, from all of these individuals that we have talked about, if you are measuring success in terms of maybe having private jets, having yachts, and all of these things, you will also know that not many people will be considered successful on the basis of that, right? So we can go on and on. So it's, in essence, what we are saying is success in life is actually beyond achieving set goals or set targets. It is beyond making money. It is beyond being popular. And on the basis of that, I would say success in life is relative to individual purpose, and potential. Success in life is relative to individuals' purpose and potential. So from the character that we started with, you can say from the perspective of God, success is simply finding and fulfilling God's purpose for a person's life. From the perspective of God, from the standpoint of God, success is simply finding and fulfilling God's purpose for a person's life, God's purpose for your life. Another way of saying that is discovering what God wants you to do in life as a person and deploying your maximum capacity, energy, and all of that to the fulfillment of the same. That is what God considers success. And that may be a bit strange to some of us because by virtue of maybe our socialization, the way we have brought up some ideas that we are almost always thinking about what people have achieved to actually decide whether they are successful or not. But in simple terms, I say success in life from the perspective of God is relative to individuals' purpose and their potential in God. How do I know? How do I mean? Luke chapter number 12. Luke chapter number 12, verse 48. Luke chapter number 12, verse 48. A very popular passage of scripture that people quote, even people that don't know God, people that are not Christians, even quote it. It says, to whom much is given, much is expected. To whom much is given, much is expected. Now, in simple terms, if it says to whom much is given, the idea of much also presupposes that there is less. So some are giving more, some are giving less. Yeah, that is not the problem. It said to whom much is given, much is expected. That means in simple terms, whether we like it or not, whether it's in line with what we have always believed or not, some people are giving less, some people are giving more. Or if you like, some people are actually giving much more. So some people are giving less, some people are giving more, some people are giving much more. And from the standpoint of God, you only measure yourself in relation to what you have been given, the measure that you have been given. So, on this basis, if we understand this, we will know that most of what people chase, most of what we call the rat race, is just people trying to compete with one another without understanding how much they have been given or the dimension that they have been given. Now, for this reason, comparison is so problematic. It's always a problem when we compare ourselves with others. That is why from the beginning we asked the question, whose definition of success is driving your life? On whose ideas are you actually basing your judgment of what success is, of what failure is? What is the motivation? What is the inner drive for your pursuits in life? So comparison is so problematic because before you can effectively compare, you must actually know the measure that a person has been given. You must know the measure that a person has been given. So when you hear things like, oh, you must have certain things, or you must have achieved certain result by a certain age, you must have certain material possession by a certain time, you must do this by this particular age, it breeds comparison and it puts people in problem. So on a lighter move, but a real life situation, I remember there was one time we were actually in a youth meeting, and then the coordinator was just saying all of these ideas, some of these motivational ideas that people say that, oh, if you are maybe at a particular age, you are still dependent on your parent. Maybe if you are 30 or whatever, you are still dependent on your parent, you are a failure, and all of those things like that, that you should go out, make money. And then just while he was saying that, in no time, somebody's phone got missing. And then we searched everywhere, we couldn't find the phone. And somebody just said, you see, that's the problem. When you are actually trying to motivate people without actually contextualizing your point, people become desperate and they resort to all sorts of means just to be able to measure up with the society's idea of success. So the phone just got missing. Obviously, it was taken by somebody there, somebody that has heard that kind of a thing. It doesn't mean that it was because of what they heard that they actually did what they did. But that is just a way of contextualizing what we are saying that as much as possible, while you can motivate yourself by trying to say, oh, this person is doing this, I need to be doing this as well, you need to understand your potential. You need to understand God's purpose for your life before you can actually set effective goals and pursue the same. So we say comparison is problematic. So where some of us must have heard messages that will say things like, oh, if you are a full-time housewife, maybe you are a failure or all that. I say, oh, if that is the case, think about Susanna Wesley that I mentioned, for example, and what she did, and how she was able to raise excellent godly children. That's the mother of John Wesley, by the way, for those that may not know. So when you hear things like that, oh, you must be married by a particular age. I think one of the sessions last year, I said people that say, oh, you must be married by a particular age. For example, if you think about people like Joseph in the Bible, think about people like Isaac in the Bible. When Isaac got married, he was 40 years of 40 years of age. Think about Samuel. God called him as a child. Think about people like Abraham at 75. So would you say he was a failure because he didn't start on time, or what? Think about current American president when he became president now, and think about the time that he was actually vice president to somebody maybe that was young enough to be his child. So all of these things are relative to individuals' potential relative to God's purpose for their life. So if people say, oh, if you are not married by a certain age, you consider yourself a capital failure and all of that. Think about Paul in the Bible. Think about several examples that show the variations that you can have between different classes or different categories of people. So what we are saying is success from the standpoint of God is principally, that is the keyword, principally about finding your purpose in God, discovering your potential, discovering how much you have been given, and living accordingly, fulfilling the same. When you do that, from the standpoint of God, it is considered a successful life. It may not be considered success from the standpoint of people, and we'll talk more about certain parameters and all that with which you can measure yourself, with which you can actually decide whether you are actually on track, whether you are fulfilled in life or not. There is a portion in the Bible, it says, a heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy. In other words, some of the people that you probably are considering as role models, they know whether they are successful or not. They are the only ones that know whether deep down within them they are successful or not. I mean, I've heard stories of people whose parents, for example, influenced to study certain things, certain disciplines in the university, and afterwards they just abandoned all of these things and started doing something completely unrelated. So from the standpoint of God, success in life is about finding God's purpose for your life, understanding your uniqueness as a person and living accordingly, understanding the measure that you have been given. It's not important whether it's less or much now. Understanding the measure that you have been given and living according to the same. It is as simple as that. So the next question, which is actually the bulk of what we want to talk about now, is now how do you now find the measure that you have been given? How do you know God's purpose, God's design, God's intention for your life, and then live accordingly? So first of all, we'll talk about how to find it, and then we'll look at some parameters to actually know whether we have found it or not. And then in the part two of this particular series, we look at how to deploy it effectively, or how to fulfill the same. So how do you actually know whether you have found God's purpose, God's original intention for your life? How do you know whether you are living true to your potential or no? Or on what basis do you actually measure yourself in relation to what God has put inside of you? So I say that is not difficult to actually do. Let's look at some of the proofs, some of the results, evidence that you have actually not found it, that you don't know God's purpose, God's design for your life, that you are more or less running what we call a rat race. You are just doing what every other person around you is doing. What are some of the proofs? Because if we say success in life is relative to purpose and potential, the next question is, how do you know if you are found? We say it's not difficult. You just look at these proofs, these results to actually see that, oh, if I do this, it's an indication that I've actually not found God's purpose for my life. It's an indication that I'm just pursuing or joining the rat race. It's an indication that I have not found the real deal, the real thing that I'm supposed to be living by. Now, number one, how do you know that you are actually not, you have not found God's original purpose for your life? You have not discovered your potential. You are just pursuing what every other person around you is doing. How do you discover that you have not found it? Number one, you cannot explain it in a simple, clear sentence. You cannot explain it. You cannot state it in a simple, clear sentence. In just a sentence, not too many sentences. Not that, oh, I am supposed to be doing this, I'm called to be doing this, I'm called to be doing that. Now, if you check something in the Bible, if you check scriptures like Romans chapter 1 verse 1, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 1, many of the introductory parts of the New Testament, for example, you will read things like Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ, Peter, a bond servant of Jesus Christ, and our brother Titus, James, a bond servant of Christ. This one, an apostle called by the will of God. So you will see all of these patterns there. So just look at it. Romans chapter 1 verse 1, 1 Corinthians 1 1, Galatians 1 1, Colossians, all of these scriptures, you will see this pattern there. Now, those were not just mere introductions. Those were not just cliches. Those were not just things that people just say to be able to get the church into the mood of being able to actually relate to what they had to say. No, they were statements of purposes. They were statements of purposes of the writers. The writers were telling the people that, oh, we are writing this to you from our office as this particular person. We are writing this to you from a good understanding of our purposes in Christ. We are not just writing to you as any other person. I am writing as Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ. I am writing as Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ. I am writing as James. Right? So that is my mission statement. That is my purpose. That is the basis for what I am doing. You can understand what I'm writing by looking at the office, the standpoint from which I'm writing it. So those were descriptions of their offices, of their missions. So if people ask you as a person, what is your potential? What is your purpose in life? What are you living for? If you cannot describe it in a sentence, it is an indication that you might actually be chasing shadows, that you actually do not know it. I've said before how we're just having a random discussion. Someone just tell me, Peter, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years' time? And I just mentioned it to her without thinking about it. She was like, oh, that was like so articulate. How come you were able to do that? I said, don't worry. It's a matter of like process, years of discovery, years of fine-tuning and all that. So if you as an individual, you cannot summarize what you are expected to do in life, what you are living for, in one sentence, it is an indication that you are still not clear about it. You might actually just be chasing shadows like every other person around you. So I challenge individuals here to have all sorts of challenges that people have online. Have what we call like a 1 minute challenge. The 1 minute challenge is you want to be able to summarize what your purpose is, or one sentence challenge, if you like to call it that way, what your mission statement in life is. Just as organizations have mission statement, you as a person, can you just say it in one sentence, in 1 minute, or even less than that, what your mission in life is? The inability to say that is actually a proof that a person does not know God's purpose for their life. So the first one we say, you have not found God's purpose for your life. You are just keeping up with the Joneses, as they say, because you cannot explain, you cannot describe what your life mission is, what your life assignment is in one sentence. Number two, how do you know that you have not found what is God's design, what is God's intention for your life? Very simple. Every opportunity catches your attention. If every opportunity catches your attention, it is an indication that you have not found that one thing that you are supposed to be doing. So today somebody is involved in banking. Tomorrow another person is thinking about joining oil and gas. Another person is saying, oh, the money is in maybe forex trading. Another person is saying, oh, the money is actually in selling cars or importation and exportation. and all of this. So when every opportunity catches your attention, when you think every opportunity to make money, there's money in this thing, let me go there, it is actually a proof, it is an indication that you do not know, you have not discovered what you are supposed to be doing. Now, this does not mean, for example, maybe a person that is into business, that maybe their gift, their passion is about identifying opportunities and capitalizing on that. No, it's about people doing things that are completely unrelated, people doing things that are, you cannot actually connect them together. They are just driven by the wind of circumstances, so to say. So I say, on the basis of that, what we actually call opportunities in life are actually relative to individuals' potentials and purposes. Opportunities in life are relative to individuals' potentials and purposes. In other words, what is considered opportunity by some people might actually constitute a distraction for some other people if they have actually discovered what they are supposed to be doing. So if you check in the Bible, for example, there's a place where the people wanted to make Jesus king and he ran away, right? They wanted to make him a king and he ran away. That was an opportunity, but he avoided it, right? He actually ran away. Why would he do that? Because he knew that that was not for him. So if you are always enticed, right, by every opportunity, by every offer to make money, offer to maybe travel abroad, for example, offer to do whatever, it can actually be a proof, an indication that you do not know what you are supposed to be living for as a person. You are just attracted by every opportunity around you. So being attracted by every opportunity around is actually a proof, an indication that a person is yet to discover or live according to God's purpose, God's intent for their life. Number three, how do you know that you have not discovered God's purpose for your life? How do you know that you are just chasing shadows or just pursuing what every other person around you is doing? You are constantly measuring yourself with others. You are constantly comparing yourself with others. You are constantly looking over your shoulders to see what your neighbors are doing, to see what your colleagues are achieving, to see what your brothers, your sisters, people in your immediate society are doing. So you want to seek their approval on the basis of what they are doing. So if they have maybe a particular type of car, or if they have achieved certain things, or if they go for holidays somewhere, or if they are wearing certain type of designer clothes and all of that, you are constantly measuring yourself, right? You are constantly looking over your shoulder to say, oh, is this what these people are doing? This is what I will do as well. So there is no uniqueness in your approach. There is no originality in what you're doing. You are merely just copying what every other person around you is doing. And this applies to every area of life. So in Christianity, for example, there are churches that they just look at what some other people are doing and they copy the same. There are individuals that just look at what another person is doing and they just do the same. Maybe you are a student, for example, they say, oh, in our school, this is how to read, to have this particular type of grade, you need to go. People just do the same, right? You are essentially measuring yourself. You are trying to compare yourself with what others are doing. And we look at the problem with comparison in detail sometimes last year at the School of Wisdom, when we talk about wisdom and foolishness. So when you are constantly judging yourself by what others do, when you are constantly seeking approval by what is generally acceptable, then it is a proof, it is a sign that you actually do not know what you are supposed to be doing, what is God's purpose, what is God's design for you as a person. So in other words, when you are afraid to be different, right, you cannot understand your uniqueness. Why should you be different? So the question that I ask is, why should you not be different? Why should you just be doing what every other person is doing? So this will give us an idea that, oh, maybe if everybody in your family, for example, is studying medicine, it does not necessarily mean you are supposed to study medicine. I've seen individuals like that they just try to measure up with maybe the standard set by maybe their brothers or their sisters, their parents, and they constantly struggle until they eventually give up. So measuring ourselves with what others are doing, judging ourselves, our standard, the results that we have, on the basis of what other people are doing, it is actually a proof that we don't understand our potential. We don't understand our potential. So when we say success is relative to purpose and potential, somebody might go to school, for example, and graduate maybe with a first class. Another person may go to school and graduate with a second class lower, and they will be fulfilled. So we need to be able to understand purposes and potentials before we label people as, oh, this is a failure or this is a successful person and all of that. Success is always relative to individuals' potential, to God's deposit in them. Just think about what we said about being given much, and some being given much more, some being given less. So the third point, the third evidence, proof that a person has actually not discovered God's purpose, God's intention for their life, is the fact that they are constantly judging themselves by what others are doing. They are constantly measuring themselves by what others around them are doing or what they have achieved. Number four, how do you know that you have actually not found the reason for living, the main thing in the mind of God for your life? How do you know that? You are always dissatisfied with what you do. You are dissatisfied about your job. You are dissatisfied about your work. You are dissatisfied about your life, right? So I often say that there are two kinds of jobs in life. Generally speaking, there are just two types of job, and these are relative to individuals. The first one is just any job that you can do that can put food on your table. And that is what you are supposed to be doing until you discover the real job, the proper job that you're supposed to be doing. So in the Bible, it says, whatever your hands find to do it, right? So that is a job, what I call just job, just any job that you can find. At any point in time, when maybe you are just rising in life, you are just trying to achieve things, whatever your hands find to, you just do it. That is just any job. However, if you keep doing that particular job, a time will come that the job will not give you satisfaction again. A time will come that the job will bring you dissatisfaction. You'll be yearning that, oh, there is more. There is something in you crying for greater expression. So maybe, for example, you are a teacher, you are fulfilled where you are, and something is tearing you up, maybe to just go for a higher level, go for a higher degree. You are a medical doctor, something is pushing, something is inside of you that, oh, there should be more. I should be able to do much more than this, right? So when you are perpetually dissatisfied about your job, right, that is regardless of, let's say, challenges of maybe economic challenges, now challenges of unemployment, structural constraints, for example, economic hardship in some countries or in different countries at different times in the world. So it is possible that, oh, I'm just doing this job just to survive. That is okay, right? But a time will come that job will not be able to satisfy you as a person again. That is when you need to be able to move to the level of discovering what is unique about you as a person, what is God's design, God's deposit for you, and living accordingly, right? So as simple as that, economic challenges can push people into just any job. However, that should not be the ultimate determinant of what you do as a person or what you do not do, right? So why is that? Why am I saying that? Because in general term, location does not come first. Location does not come first. Structural factors, structural barriers do not come first. Why? Individual capacity, individual drive, individual desire matter much more than we actually know. Location is important. I'm not saying location is not important. Location is actually very important. But like something that I've written here is that even if a person wonders, if they just wander and find themselves in the palace, their purposelessness will still drive them back to ignoble life. I'll take that again. If a person wanders and find their way to the palace, they find their way to the place of prominence, but they are still purposeless, there is a way that their purposelessness will impact on the choices they make, the decisions they make, and they will revert back to ignoble life. They will revert back to ordinary living. In other words, people don't just find themselves in the palace by accident. People don't just become successful. They don't just live effectively by accident. So it's not just, oh, you are responding to economic challenges or economic difficulties and you're just moving, you're just doing anything that is available to you. There's a time for that, but there is also a time to look much more inward, ask yourself some questions and be able to actually respond accordingly. This is also related to what I call inner dissatisfaction. Inner dissatisfaction. That is, you are just not so happy. On the surface, on the outside, you have everything that should make you happy, make you fulfilled. But it's like the more you achieve or tend to achieve or go in that particular direction that you're going, the more you feel empty, the more you feel there is more. And oftentimes I always say, whenever you feel there is more, it is actually because there is more. Whenever you feel there is more, it is actually because there is more. So we have said, how do you know that you have not discovered what you're supposed to be living for? I've shared 4 major points here that a person does not or cannot explain what they are living for in a simple sentence. They are always attracted by every opportunity around them. They are constantly measuring or judging themselves by what other people are doing, and then they are perpetually unhappy. They are unsatisfied with what they are doing. They are not fulfilled. That should tell you, how do you know if you are actually living in line with your potential, in line with God's purpose for your life? How do you know that? Very simple. There is a sense of fulfillment. There is a sense of joy that comes with being in purpose. There's a sense of joy that comes with that. So somebody say, if you have not found what you can die for, you have actually not discovered what you can live for. That a person that does not know, that does not yet know what they can die for, what they can give their life for, what is so paramount to them that they can give all that they have actually not discovered what they are living for. So this tells us that success in life is principally about inner drive, inner desire, inner motivation, what is within you. So if you go back to Luke chapter number 12 that we talked about, Luke chapter number 12, 48 to 50, Jesus was speaking there. He said, I have a baptism to be baptized with. I have something that is driving me that you people don't know. You might be looking at outer trappings. You might be looking at what seems like result, but there is something much more that is driving me, something beyond me that is motivating me. That inner drive, that inner motivation is actually more important to a person of purpose than outward appearances or outward manifestations or outward results. So I remember, for example, when I gained admission to the university, it wasn't that I looked at anybody, it wasn't that I saw anything. I just look at what I measure myself with. I just look at myself. I look at the grace of God that I know I have. I say, oh, if I go to university and I have this result by my first semester, I should be able to graduate with a first class. Now, if I do not graduate with a first class, regardless of any result or any other thing that I have, I will consider it a failure, a shortcoming that I have not actually measured up to my potential. It wasn't based on what anybody said. It wasn't based on what any other person did. But like I mentioned, for someone else, just being able to go to school and just pass is enough. Or some being able to just go to school and pass after many failures, it's enough. So that's why we say it is relative. But then there is a sense of fulfillment that comes deep down within you when you have actually found it. So I remember, I think sometimes either late last year or early this year, randomly, my wife just asked me, how do you feel when you go to work or when you are returning from work or when you're at work? Without thinking about it, I said, wow, I feel so fulfilled. I feel so privileged. I continue to thank God for it. I continue to have joy. It's something that I do. I enjoy so much. I enjoy doing it so much that essentially I always say to my supervisor when I was doing a PhD, for example, that some of the things you're asking me to do, there are things I can actually do for free. I can actually do for free. I can teach for free. I can speak to people for free. I can exhort people. I can motivate, challenge them, encourage them, counsel them for free. These are things that deep down within me, they give me a sense of joy, a sense of fulfillment. So many years ago, I would always say to people then that if you ever see me doing anything that doesn't involve speaking, that doesn't involve talking to people, just know that I am out of place. Just know that I'm doing what I'm not supposed to be doing. So we are saying there's a sense of fulfillment, a sense of joy that comes with knowing that you are actually doing the right thing. You are living on the basis of what God intend for you to be doing. So if you are going to job, you are always grumbling, you don't like the job regardless of your boss, or you don't like the job regardless of what happens, it can be a proof, an indication that maybe you are just working for this paycheck, or are just responding to structural constraints, external factors around you, and there is no way that can give a person any form of joy. So on the basis of that, I said the best form of motivation in life is self-motivation. The best form of motivation is self-motivation. The best form of drive is the one that comes from within a person. The best form of motivation is self-motivation. The best form of drive is the one that comes from within a person. From within a person. You are not just chasing shadows. You are not just doing what people are doing, but you are actually searching yourself. You are checking your heart. You are asking questions, and you are making moves. You are responding accordingly. So I say for many of us, the starting point of our journey of success in life, of our journey of real success, true success in life, is actually reviewing our drive. The starting point for many of us is reviewing our drive, reviewing our vision, reviewing our motivations in life, reviewing what we are doing. In short, you can ask and try to answer genuinely, why am I doing what I am doing? Whose idea of success is driving me? Asking such questions might be the best deliverance that someone needs. Asking this type of questions and seeking to answer them sincerely. And we'll talk about how you can answer them sincerely shortly. It can be the best form of deliverance that someone needs. So remember what we have talked about so far today. We said success in life is relative to individuals' purpose and their potential. That from the standpoint of God, from God's angle, success is about finding and fulfilling God's purpose for your life, God's intention for your life. Actually giving birth to what was in the mind of God, or what God put inside of you before you were born. Right? As simple as that. Now, I heard the story of a driver, just a driver of a very mighty pastor, a mighty man of God. And the person said, one day their driver just walked up to them and said, you know what? God just told me, or they just felt that they received it, that my purpose in life is to work with you, to just assist you, to be your driver. Now, not many of us will consider a driver as a successful person, but of course, there are drivers that own like things that some business owners do not own. Right? There are people that are working for others in partnership that are much more successful than many entrepreneurs, as we know them, quote and unquote. So it is important that we discover and live according to this. So, going ahead, the next question is, how then do we discover? How then do we know for sure that this is what I'm supposed to be doing? Or from evaluating ourselves, you have discovered, or you have found out that, oh, maybe I'm actually chasing shadows. Maybe what I'm doing is not bringing me fulfillment. Maybe I've just been measuring myself by what I see around me, by what others are doing around me, right? So what do you do? How can you discover this thing and then have this sense of fulfillment that you cannot get elsewhere? You cannot get, whether going for holiday, whether buying the best items, living in the best country in the world, whatever you want to say. There is a gap, a vacuum that a person will not be able to find to fill until they actually know what they are supposed to be doing in life and living accordingly. So how do you find this particular purpose? How do you begin to discover your potential, what you are supposed to be doing as a person? I would say very simple answer: look. Just look. Look. Just look. What do I mean by look? I will talk about it in three forms, and then we'll wrap up. Or if you are unable to complete this, we'll continue next month. Now, just look. What do I mean by looking? Number one, look up or look upward, right? Look up. You want to know God's purpose for your life. You want to be fulfilled in life. Look up or look upward. That is, ask God. Pray about it. What am I living for? What is God's purpose for my life, right? I remember many years ago, maybe 15 years or more, I was just in discussion with some guys. We were just talking randomly. And I just said, you know what, if you want to discover God's purpose for your life, wake up every 12 midnight, spend time worshiping God, praying, reading the Bible, and then asking yourself some serious questions. I just said those things. And when he left, something just told me like we said, something just told me, why can't you do what you just advise people to do? Right? Why can't you just do what you just advise them to do? And of course, I did it and all that. So, if you are actually serious about knowing what you should be living for as a person, wake up in the night, for example, set time to pray, set time to read the Bible, ask God about it, ask yourself questions, right? So that is about looking up, prayer, right? Or effective prayer. And of course, that is a function of a thriving relationship with God, right? A function of a thriving relationship with God. So I say, in short, the more a person knows God, right, the more they discover their uniqueness. The more you know God, the more you move closer to God, the more you discover your uniqueness as a person. And the more you know your uniqueness, the more you discover your uniqueness, the more effective you live. The more effective you live. I take that again. The more a person knows God, the more they discover their uniqueness. The more a person discovers their uniqueness, the more effective they live. And overall, what we call success is simply effective living. So, relationship with God, knowing God is actually a booster, right? A foundation for effective living, right? The more a person knows God, the more a person relates with God, the more a person consciously develop their relationship with God. You are praying, right? Nobody's coercing you. You are not just doing anything because that is what is in vogue. You have time. You don't get too busy for God, right? You are praying. You are studying the Bible. You are asking God questions. You are talking to God as a friend. That is what I call friendly prayers. You just talk to God as you are walking on the street. God, this is what I'm thinking. What can you help me with this? The more you do that, when you begin to do that, you see that God is actually real. God is not some mystery that some people just advance somewhere. It can be real to you as a person if you make the conscious efforts, right, to actually know Him. So in the Bible, it says, draw near to God, and then God will draw near to you. God will help you to see what you are expected to be doing, what you are supposed to be living by. So we say, the more you know God as a person, the more you discover your uniqueness. The more you discover your uniqueness, the more effective you live. So effectiveness in life is closely related to individual uniqueness. Effectiveness, if you check it very well, people, if you want to be effective, you must know your uniqueness, right? And once you are living effectively, you can say, oh yeah, this is success. I am fulfilled. There's a sense of fulfillment that comes with that. So I don't think anyone, for example, will argue and say, well, if I say success is about effective living, I don't think anybody can argue with that. But like we said, effectiveness is relative. Effectiveness is relative to individuals' uniqueness, and discovering our uniqueness is connected to walking with God, knowing God as a person, spending time with Him, relating with Him as a friend, because He actually is our friend. So we say, how do you find God's intention, God's mind for life? So just look. And the first one we say, look upward. Now the second one is look inward. Look inward. Ask yourself questions. Now, we like to think of some people as being gifted, of some people as being talented. But in simple terms, whether you agree with it or not, whether you know it or not, everybody in life is talented. Everybody in life is gifted. Some gifts are more obvious than others, but everybody in life has got certain uniqueness, certain traits, certain giftings, certain qualities that others do not have. So if you check in First Peter in the Bible, First Peter 4:10, it says, "As each one has received a gift, as each one has received a gift." And then Proverbs 18:16 says it says a man's gift. That's in a generic sense. A woman's gift, a boy's gift, a girl's gift. Make room for him, right? So everybody is gifted, right? Everybody has a gift. I usually say everybody has a gift. Every gift resides in a body. Everybody has a gift. Every gift resides in a body. So everybody is actually gifted. Everybody can offer something. Everybody can do something. It might not be obvious. It might be something that you need to spend time to do, spend time to reflect on it. So, and when we talk about this idea of gift or individual uniqueness, there are two major things You can think about individual talents and gifts, like we said. Some can sing, some can draw, some can do many things. But the more you actually pay attention to your strengths, the easier it is for you to capitalize on the same and make a success of it, right? So I usually say to people, for example, that there are many things I know I cannot do, but you won't know because I also know the things that I can do. That I will say jokingly that even if you give me a ruler and a pen to draw a straight line, it will still not be straight. If you give me anything to draw, most likely I will fail. I don't know how to draw. My hands are not straight and all of those things. But I know how to speak. I know how to talk. Right? So it can be something as simple as that, but it takes time. It takes paying attention to oneself. It takes doing some deep reflection, soul searching. What is it that is actually unique about me? What can I do effortlessly? What is it that I do that people maybe compliment, they talk to me about? And if not for money, if not for time, if not for maybe some constraint around me, what do I actually want to do? What is it that gives me greatest joy, greatest fulfillment, and all of this? That is very, very important with regards to looking inwards. You're talking about individual giftings, individual talents, individual traits. It can be things that interest you from childhood. You just cannot shake off that particular interest or that particular area of life. There are several of them, and I'll relate that to what I will talk about looking around you. The third point. So we say, how do you know your found God's purpose? Just look upward, look inward. And the third point, look around you. What issues, what problems, what challenges around you catch your attention? What is it that it may not matter to other people, but to you, it's a big deal. It's a big issue, right? If you think about it very well, there are certain things that whenever you hear about them, you feel moved to be able to do some things. You feel challenged that, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? So in the Bible, Jesus said, for this purpose was I born. This particular thing, there is something that is around you that needs your attention, that is demanding for God's deposit, God's grace upon your life. And this can be as varied as you can imagine. So it can be something that happened in your childhood, your unique childhood experience, Maybe as a child, because of the adverse conditions in which you grew up, maybe because of some situations you were subjected to, that conditioned you, that motivated you. I know somebody that said when he was a child, he was just impressed by a particular speech from a politician that he heard, and that remained with him all his life until he became a public office holder. Some other people, negative childhood experiences, they were abused, for example, in their childhood, and then that inspired them, that motivated them to be offering solace to other people in similar situations, and several other things like that. Even in the Bible, your unique childhood experiences. Think about people like Moses, for example. So what is it around you that is peculiar in a way that it challenges you? It moves you so much that you want to do something about it. It can be a problem, it can be an issue of injustice or whatever. A person, for example, being moved so much by so many sick people, they decided to be a doctor. A person being moved by injustices around them, they decided to study law. Researchers, inventors being moved by problems around them, right? Somebody being moved by the challenges of even being able to buy foodstuff, hygienic foodstuff, and then she started a supermarket. So there are several ways, several dimensions, several indicators of this particular thing that you are supposed to be doing, right? So in the Bible, it says by faith Moses moved, right? When he saw the affliction of people there was something that moved him. And somebody said the problems that move you around you, the problem that catch your attention, the problems that catch your attention around you are indicators of the solution that is inside of you, right? The problems, right, that catch your attention, the challenges that move you around you are indicators of the solutions that are already domiciled inside of you, right? So what have we talked about so far today? We have said success in life is not just about popularity, it's not just about making money, it's not just about possessions or having fancy things and all that. if you say some people are successful because they have certain possessions, would you say people that do not have such possessions are not successful? And we look at some biblical characters, we look at some examples in contemporary world, and we say on the basis of these examples, success in life is about finding and fulfilling God's purpose for your life. That success in life is relative to individual's purpose and potential. And we say, how do you know that you have not found this? Or how do you know whether what you're doing is genuine or not? Number one, you are not measuring yourself by what other people are doing. You are not attracted by every opportunity around you. You are not living in this state of perpetual dissatisfaction. You are not just living because every other person is doing what they are doing. You are not living in this state of perpetual dissatisfaction, and you are not constantly measuring yourself. And of course, you can say what you are living for in a short sentence, in a simple sentence. I will say, how do we find it? That you just simply need to look inward, look upward, and look around you. Our time is gone for this month, and we'll continue this series next month by looking at part 2 of this, true success in life. And we'll be looking at, if we have talked about finding it, we'll just review the finding it part, and then we'll go to look at fulfilling it. And then you'll be able to measure what you're doing in your life, whether it's can be called successful or not. Now, in terms of our next meeting, by the grace of God, we'll continue on the 18th of March, the third Friday of every month, and it promises to be an exciting and highly impactful session. Thank you so much for joining. If anybody has got questions, including getting it right with the law, giving their hearts to the law, the email address, you can contact me on that email address on the screen, or just drop me a message on any of the social media platforms, and it will be my utmost delight to answer such questions and be helpers of your joy. Thank you so much. Please share it with people that you know will be a blessing to, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.